Hey, shalom. All right, so I'm just going to read Matthew 24 and 24 real quick. For there shall arise false... Actually, let me start at verse 22. Apologies. And except those days should be shortened, should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Mashiach, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Mashiachs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, so much so that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So this came to mind recently with some things going on in my own personal life, and I just wanted to share it with you all just in case it's something that might help you. So that came to mind for two reasons. The first one is, so I don't know if you guys have seen or heard about the GATE program, Gifted and Talented Educational Program. Started in like the 70s, maybe even before then. Maybe it was just implemented in the 70s. Anyway, I started seeing videos popping up in my YouTube. Now, mind you, I didn't search for this or anything similar to this, so YouTube literally just put it into my algorithm. But unfortunately, I took the bait and I was like, well, what's the GATE program? And I watched it, and the things they were talking about, like the different tests and stuff they were doing on the kids, unaware, and some of their parents were unaware of what was going on. I'm like, well, I remember doing those things, but I just thought everybody was doing those things. Apparently, according to what these videos are saying, they were not, right? But then Ruach HaQadash, because I started to get sucked down a rabbit hole, you guys. Then Ruach HaQadash said, that's not my voice. Stop listening. And I was like, oh, heard you loud and clear, because it didn't seem evil, you know what I'm saying? Like, these people were just talking about experiences that they believe that had happened to them. And like I said, because I'm listening like, well, that I remember that stuff too, but I thought it was just everybody was doing it, so it didn't seem inherently evil. Okay, now hold that. The second thing I wanted to talk about was a few days after that happened, I had two weird emails. The first one popped up, and it was this gentleman. So I have a podcast called Replenish, and Yahuah had me to start it in November of 2021. I still have the podcast. I'm still, posting episodes. But Yahuah gave me specific instructions on how to run that podcast, including, there's a whole story behind why Replenish is spelled the way it's spelled. Like, the name itself came from him. Like, it's everything came from Yahuah. And I initially wanted to have guests on there because I don't enjoy listening to myself just sit here and talk. And it's very weird just looking at a phone and talking to it like I'm talking to people. So, I wanted to have guests on there so we could all discuss Yahuah and so on and so forth. But that's just not how it has happened, how it's played out, because every time I line up people to possibly come on there, it never happens that way. But I have to do what Yahuah tells me to do, so I wind up just doing an episode by myself. And with that being said, I get this email, and it's this dude talk about holistic health. And I don't think there's anything wrong with holistic health because, I use herbs and stuff to, heal headaches and stuff like that. Like, I don't do pharmaceuticals. Except for recently, I did have to take some cold medicine because I was out somewhere where I didn't have access to the pharmaceuticals, and my migraine, my cough, all that stuff is just way too bad. And I was like, let me go ahead and knock this out. But I hated the fact that I had to take that NyQuil. I really did. I didn't have nothing else though, and I was suffering. I was struggling. With that being said, I did ask Yahuah for forgiveness for that and have moved on. And I make sure now that I carry my tinctures and stuff with me so I don't get caught slipping again. But with that being said, like, I do believe in herbal remedies and so on and so forth. So in his email didn't really seem all that bad, but in his words, he thought that what he was talking about would enrich the listeners of the podcast even more when they pair it with what it is that Yahuah has me saying on the podcast. Now, again, that doesn't seem evil, but I went to Yahuah, and Yahuah was like, nah. You know what I'm saying? All right, no problem. But instead of saying, no, I can't do it, what I was led to say was, hey, we can't do that on this platform. But if you have a platform that you know of, or if another platform opens up that you would like to have this conversation with me about what you have to talk about, then by all means, we can do that. Their only response was, all right, thank you for letting me know. That's it. They didn't say anything like, sure, okay, I totally understand. Maybe we can find another, platform. Like, there was no further conversation about this. So to me, now this might not be what's happening, but I just believe that that was my sign that that person just wanted to be on replenish, and that person was from the enemy. There's other stuff in the email that had me looking at it a little sideways, which was one of the main reasons why I went to Yahuwah first. But I'm glad that I did, because again, this is something that Yahuwah has me doing, so I need to inquire of Yahuwah as to how he wants, or who he wants on there. Clearly nobody, because I've tried to have guests that are set apart on there and it still didn't work out. But then the next email was this husband and wife couple. These people sent me their resumes, their headshots. Mind you, I'm not even sure why I'm getting these emails, right? Like, it's not like I have the #1 podcast in, 4 different countries and, people are just like, ooh, I want to be on this podcast. I have this little podcast that hardly anybody knows about. I'm grateful for the few people that listen. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I can't remember everything that was going on in that email, but I do know at some point in time, the woman had mentioned that they wanted to discuss ED. Now, because of YouTube, I'm going to have to describe what ED is if you haven't already picked up on ED or don't already know what ED is. But when a husband and a wife are being intimate and he is having issues with his man bits, that is ED. All right, there we go. Now we're on the same page. So she wanted to discuss this on a podcast where I talk about the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahuwah Zabaoth. And I know somebody is still probably like, well, what's wrong with that? A lot. Because why are we discussing intimacy between a man and a woman in the bedroom in a place where we should, there's platforms for this. There's times and places for this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with us talking about stuff like that where Yahuwah wants us to talk about it, because there is a need for those discussions, so on and so forth. Replenish is not that place, though, according to Yahuwah. That's not what he set that up for, right? So, again, immediately no. You know what I'm saying? And there was some other things that was being said, because they did mention that they were spiritual. And from my experience in the occult, back before I started believing in anything outside of witches and warlocks and whatnot, back when I was part of the occult, I understood that when people said that they were spiritual, that meant that they usually did something occultish. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I used to say. And so with that being said, when I became a Christian and people used to be like, I'm spiritual, I'm like, what spirit? Because it could be any spirit. You do understand that Hasatan is a spirit. So, like, what spirit? Like, what spirit are we talking about? So with that being said, went to Yahuwah again. Yahuwah's like, no. So the answer is no. So what's my point? Going back to Matthew 22 to 24, Yahuwah's letting us know that he's purposely shortening the days so that those that he considers his elect will be saved. And then he further lets us know in verse 24 that because if he didn't, if possible, even the very elect, those are the people that standing 10 toes down on Yahushua HaMashiach, that are doing their best not to go outside of Yahuwah's laws, statutes, and commandments according to how he wants them to operate in them. Those people that are fully surrendering to Yahuwah and allowing Ruach HaQadash to move in and through them. Like, these people might even be deceived if I don't wrap this thing up. You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about the lukewarms. The lukewarms are already possibly part of the strong delusion at this point. He's talking about them people that is out here like Abraham. I'm about to unalive my child because Yahuwah said. You know what I'm saying? Those people might even possibly be deceived if he doesn't shorten their days. You know what I'm saying? So the whole point of this is just, go to Yahuwah about everything. Do not take any chances. We're too close to Yahushua returning. Take everything to Yahuwah in prayer. Ask him about everything, because the enemy is not going to come unless you're just somebody that's so far gone and you don't have eyes to see or ears to hear. That's when the enemy starts getting obvious. But when you're somebody who is really, truly trying to walk with Yahuwah, it's going to be slick. Think about Adam and Hawa in the garden. What Hasatan, or what the serpent said to Hawa, didn't necessarily sound all that evil. Really what happened was the serpent took what Yahuwah had said to Adam and added a word into it, his own word, into what Yahuwah's word said. And that's what made it a lie. So in chapter 2, of Genesis, you see Yahuwah telling Adam not to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't even touch it, because in the day that you do, you shall surely die. So then fast forward to when Hua is talking to the serpent, and she's like, we're not supposed to eat of this because this, that, and the other, we shall surely die. The serpent says, you shall not surely die. One word was added. That one word made the whole thing a lie. And what does Yahuwah say? A little leaven leavens the whole lump. But it didn't sound evil, right? The serpent even went on to tell Hua, Yahuwah just knows that when you eat of it, you're going to be like him, being able to discern between good and evil. Which was the truth wrapped into a lie. You know what I'm saying? That's how the enemy comes at us. That's why Yahuwah wants us to seek him for everything. What does he say? Trust in Yahuwah with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. He also says there is a way that seems right unto a man, but in the end it leads to destruction. Like, we got to ask him about everything right now. Like, I do believe, because from my own personal relationship with Yahuwah, I can see how he was a little bit more lenient, in times past with, you know what? I forgot to ask you, Yahuwah. Like, as babes, I do believe that he has that grace where we're still learning to just trust him and to seek him for everything. So the times that we don't, there's that grace. But the more we grow with him, that the more we should be on our face before him, the more we should be seeking him for everything, the more we should, and that's including his instructions. Especially if he gives you something, if any of you have something that he's giving you to operate, like if y'all have a ministry, if y'all have your own YouTube channel, if you have a music, I hate to say music ministry because it sounds very churchy, but you know what I'm saying. If he's given anything to you for that you are supposed to be operating in, every single decision that's made with whatever that is, you need to run it by Yahuwah. You need to go to Yahuwah. What do you want me to do with this? What do you want me to do with that? How do you want me to do this? How do you want me to do that? And I know it seems like, well, dang, why am I always in his face? That's exactly what he wants. Because it's his will that's supposed to be getting done. And the enemy will come very subtly. The things that I told you about, they're not stuff that's just in your face like, don't do that. Just like with Hua, it wasn't an obvious lie. It seemed harmless, actually. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I had been the one in the garden, I probably would have done the same thing she did. I'm not going to sit here and act like oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that. I probably would have. It didn't sound wrong. But the problem was, what was wrong was you were already told not to do it. That's what made it wrong. Now, the story might have been a little bit different had Yahuwah not told them to eat of it. We don't know. That's not how the story went. Point is, Yahuwah gave you instructions. You did the exact opposite. You listened to another voice. You hearkened unto another voice outside of your husband's. So I also want to add this in. So this is about the end of 5783. That's 2023. I want to say that's around the time that I had this vision, but I was driving in my car. I stopped at a red light, and Yahuwah gave me this vision of me standing just inside the doorway of a house. And as I'm standing there, I was just barely far enough into that doorway to where when the door slammed behind me, like it could slam behind me. Because if I had been back just a little bit further, it would have hit me and it probably wouldn't have closed all the way. So I was barely inside of this house and this door slammed behind me. And then I heard Ruach HaQadash say that the righteous will barely get in. Like, you are barely making it into my house, right? Now, mind you, I wasn't aware, or I didn't recall 1 Peter 4:18 at the time. So I had got on a Shabbat call and I told the gentleman of the assembly that was part of that Shabbat call about the vision I had. And they were the ones that recalled 1 Peter 4:18. And it says, and if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the unknowingly and sinner appear? So when, like I said, Yahuwah told me through his Ruach that we would barely make it into his house. And so then when they brought that up, if the righteous scarcely be saved, and then you pair that with what Yahusha's saying in Matthew 24, I mean, I think it's more than obvious. But again, don't take my word for it. Do exactly what I've been saying throughout this whole entire video and go to Yahuwah about it. But yeah, I take that as, like I said before, those people that Yahuwah has counted as being just righteous in his own eyes barely made it in. We barely gonna make it in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's very, very necessary to just stay on your face. Don't do like I did and start going down rabbit holes. Like, let my testimony be an example. Don't do that. Don't do that. And praise Yah, he didn't let me go all the way down and have to crawl back up out of it. He snatched me up and was like, we're not finna do that. I praise Yah for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me be an example. That's why I got on here and told that to you. Let me be an example. Don't do what I did. Do what Yahuwah says, okay? Go to him about everything. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, you still need to ask Yahuwah if it's a duck, okay? Because if Hasatan is able to transform himself into a malach of light, to me, that means he can transform himself into a duck. Ask Yahuwah, is that a duck? Don't trust your eyeballs. Don't trust your ears. Ask Yahuwah about everything. He said, come to me as little children, right? Children ask questions, and a lot of them, all right? And you don't think that you getting on Yahuwah's nerves, because you're not getting on his nerves asking him all these questions, because you're showing him that you truly want to be obedient and led by him. You are surrendering to him and doing everything that he says. That is a good thing, okay? A good thing. And there are some people that are probably thinking, well, at some point in time we should just know better. Nope. When you get to that place where you think you should just know better, that's when the enemy starts sending things to you that look and sound like Yahuwah. That's when it happens. Okay? Nope. Don't let your guard down. Do not let your guard down. Don't let the enemy get you like that. Because of another thing that I have witnessed in my own walk, I can't say this for you, but maybe it's true for somebody. But in my personal walk, there's been times where when I did mess up, maybe it's something that I've messed up multiple times and I just keep making the wrong decision. And I'm like, dang, you know what? I just keep doing this, y'all. And I start to self-condemn. And that's what the enemy wants. You know what the Ruach HaQadash said to me just recently? You better get back up. You better get back up and come to me. That's what our Father said to me, because our Father, he's like, don't stop. That's how you get caught up. That's how you get swept up by the enemy. Because I was so frustrated with myself, you guys. I was so frustrated with myself. And he always reminds me of, I knew he was going to do every single thing you've ever done before I called you. When I called you, I knew all these things that you were going to do. Like, I already seen you do it. But I called you anyway. That's me remembering him saying that to me is what keeps me pressing forward. Him telling me that I called you knowing that you were going to do all these things. I still called you anyway. Like, that didn't matter to him. He understood the end that he had for me. So he called me anyway. And I trust that he knows more than I do. so I keep moving forward. And I just pray that this helps anybody that's listening do the same thing, because you just go to him for everything. The times it's getting harder and harder and harder to not go to the left and the right. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep your eyes focused on Yahushua. You got to keep your eyes focused on Yahushua. And I'm pretty sure that somebody listening to this is like, duh, it's easy. What you got going on? Listen, I ain't never claimed to be nobody perfect. I'm just letting you know what's been going on in my life. And I'm pretty sure if it's going on in my life, it's going on in somebody else's life. Hallelujah, Yahuwah. If you ain't never had to do what I'm talking about, and this is not even something that's even all that bad compared to some other stuff that I could be talking about. But my whole point is, hallelujah, if this is not for you, and if you don't have these issues. But for the ones that do, just, I'm going to keep you in prayer. You know what I'm saying? And if you call on the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, and only Yahushua HaMashiach, then I ask you keep me in prayer as well. All right? All right, you guys. Shalom.